What's up, guys? I'm Krys with MHK Music Scene, and I'm with my co-host here, Q.
How you doing? How you doing?
And we're with Corey here, aka Sapphire Son. How you doing, Corey?
I'm fantastic.
All right. Well, you mind if I ask you some questions?
Absolutely.
All right, right on. So, I just want to know, at what point in your life did you decide to pursue music?
Honestly, it was really early on. I decided when I was I started playing piano when I was 8 years old. My parents put me in for piano lessons, and then picked up a guitar at 14, and ever since then, that's what I wanted to do. So, as a little kid, I guess I told my parents that I wanted to be a musician, trumpet player, astronaut, something else.
I love it.
So,
we all want to be astronauts as kids for some reason,
right?
Right? Because that's the cool thing.
It is the cool thing.
You want to get up on that moon, right? I feel that.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you said you took piano lessons and then you play guitar. Are those the only two instruments that you play?
The only two instruments that I can play well.
Well, okay.
I mean, I've tracked bass and a little bit of banjo, and I experiment with as much as I can.
Right on. Okay.
So
Yeah.
just expand the creative mind, as per to say, but I'm not an expert at any of it.
So how would you describe your style?
Indie folk.
Indie folk?
Yeah.
Oh,
Indie folk,
I dig
indie
that. I
pop,
dig that.
That kind of thing.
Okay.
So it's acoustically driven, and it's been that way for a while. But I started out with pop punk, and so I don't know how it molded into.
I was
indie
about to
folk.
ask, how did that?
I think a lot of it was my time in Nashville, because it was heavily, saturated indie folk in Nashville, and there were a lot of great players like that, and it brought my emotions and mood down to a place that, all of the other styles of music I ever played never could.
So it just hit different then.
Yeah. It was calming and soothing and helped me get through it. And so I think that's why I gravitated towards using that as my performance medium. Mm-hmm.
So how long were you in Nashville?
About 2.5 years. So
what brought you there? Were you just like, I got to go to Nashville, or?
Toss of a coin.
Okay.
Literally, when I was 18, I was working as a plumber, and I decided that I was plumbing during the day, and I was playing video games at night. I hadn't picked up my guitar in about 6 months, and I realized that, and then I looked at, on the video game console, I looked at how many hours I spent. And was just appalled at the time I was wasting. And so I picked up my guitar, and I realized that I was depressed, and it made me feel better. And so about a month after that, I had quit my job, got rid of my apartment, and then I did a coin toss because I had never been to either Nashville or LA, and I was like, both of those are good music places. And so I flipped a coin, and it was Nashville. And then about a week after that, I was headed there.
Okay.
So.
Well, that's dope. So Nashville definitely influenced you a lot.
Yeah.
Any other influences as far as maybe other musicians?
I mean, a lot of what I grew up listening to was, my dad listened to a lot of old country. Okay. But that really, I think what influenced me from them was more the storytelling aspect. The not trying to get too complicated with your lyrics, and more so the emotion behind it. Because country, especially older country, it's 3 chords and a tune.
Pretty simple.
Basically.
Yeah.
So that kind of, I definitely am not country. I've never played country. I've written a little bit with other people living in Nashville, but that, and I was raised in the church, so I was exposed to a lot of music very early on through that, and so it gave me the opportunity to be on stage, in front of people, and get kind of rid of my anxieties towards that at an early age. And then a lot of I listen to a lot of different stuff. Right now it's a lot of Gregory Alan Iskov. Okay. His style is he's based out of Denver, Colorado, and he's just buttery smooth, and his lyrics are phenomenal. really soothing. Iron and Wine, you know.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I'm with that.
Yeah.
I love Iron and Wine.
So, and especially, you know, with everything going on in life, and it's just they're great bands to just relax with. And I think that's where music is for me right now. It's not. It used to be a get you really pumped up all the time, and now it's my way to decompress.
Yeah, music is a healer for sure. And I always tell people when they ask me, like, well, what's my favorite whatever? Well, it depends on the situation, what mood I'm in,
I still listen to Bass Hunter.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yes. No, don't apologize for that.
It's.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. So what do you think sets you apart from other artists?
I wouldn't say that. I think the only thing that would set me apart, if that, you know, were even possible, would be the fact that I spent a lot of time by myself. I toured technically for about 4 years, but it was more so I went all across the country, found gigs wherever I was at, and used music to be able to pay my way. And so I spent a lot of time reflecting on things, and musically, you know, I'm no better than the next guy, but it's the I guess the life experience.
Yeah.
You know, mine was in a different way than some people's, and I think that gives me a unique perspective on some things that, you know, hopefully, I think what I want from it is to maybe help explain some things to people in a different way.
Okay.
Because everybody has their own experiences.
Good question. Does your music, like, do you use your music to tell stories? Is it a personal story that you use your music to do, or it's like some kind of storytelling? Because, you know, most music has a story or tells a story about something.
My music is very, it's very open-ended to interpretation. I wrote a lot of your typical love songs for a long time, and but then I've got like my latest single, Nostalgia, was a song, like, it's a story, and a friend of mine, the best way to explain this, is so a good friend of mine wrote the lyrics for it. It was an old poem of hers.
Okay.
And she didn't think it could be turned into a song, and so it was kind of a challenge for us, because, you know, she was like, you know, I have this thing, and I've been writing poetry for a while, and I looked at it and I was like, you know, this could be a song. This is really great. She's like, yeah, but the structure and everything. My storytelling comes more through the emotion of the song, more so than the lyrics, a lot of times. That's my songs usually are structured where when I write, I have, you know, a hook or a chord progression or something that, you know, I get the ideas from, coming from wherever the depths of inside of me.
All right, so I know that you work with other forms of art besides music. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
So I dabble. I dabble. What really started, like, I always wanted to be a visual artist, but I never, like, my sister got that talent. Like, it was just raw, you know, growing up. She could always just draw things and paint things, and I was always jealous of that. And then a couple of years ago, I started realizing that with the music, I had to create things to go along with it, you know, for album art, for shows. And it's hard to find people that you mesh with as a graphic designer. And usually if you do, where I was financially, I was never going to afford that. So I pushed myself to learn some graphic design, and I started to make some things for myself, and then that kind of steamrolled into other people being like, hey, so you made this thing, you know, could you help me out with that? And a lot of what I've done is mostly with nonprofits, because like I'm not an expert. I didn't go to school for it. I've been doing it regularly for probably a year now. So I do a lot of free work for, you know, things where they just really need the help, and I can see that there's like there's this void, right, you know, for their marketing and for everything else, and just making things look cool. And then the other thing that I've done is I for Nostalgia, when I released that, I did a lino cut. Which is basically a block print, like old school printing, because when I started getting into the graphic design, I got really interested in learning. Like, if I get interested in something, I dive into it. And so I wanted to see what the process was like to have to go from, an idea to paper to being able to reproduce it, the way they used to. Mm-hmm. And so I did a poster, and then I printed all of my CDs right now are all, the album art is just, it's a lino cut print. And then I also learned how to screen print so that I could make some t-shirts. Everything that I've done was for the music, everything that I learned how to do. And then it kind of became a passion where I was like, all of my friends who are in bands or who are musicians or who are artists, I always hear I can't afford it. I can't afford to do this. I can't, it's just not yet. And so I kind of take what my wife and I have done, like, because she helped with a lot of the process, and just like, I had no clue how to do any of this. I was not visually inclined. It was not a skill that I got this. It was just there. You can learn how to do it. And simple things, as a musician, if I come up with a simple t-shirt design and I print it myself and I buy the shirts at Dollar Tree for, $1 to $2 a piece, you find that sale and you have, 20 shirts and they're all mismatched, but you've got different sizes. If you're going out there and you're pushing your music and people want to support you, they're going to wear that shirt with pride. Right. Even if it's, it's your name in block print.
Exactly.
If you printed it yourself, people, it's a little more personal. Obviously, once you get to the point where, like, a lot of my stuff is, I had to do a little bit more mass producing because I just couldn't keep up with it. But that initial, it's like I want people to understand, I want musicians to understand, and artists to understand that with a little bit of research and just figuring it out. Because a lot of those things they don't necessarily take a specific skill. It's the drive to be able to learn how to do it.
The drive is a great word for that.
Because any professional, you obviously, if you're going to do it for the rest of your life and it's going to be your career, you have to have talent with it.
Yes.
But anyone who does that for a living will tell you that you just have to start. You're never going to know.
You have to.
So, I got to a point where I was tired of waiting, and so I tried all these different mediums, and it was, and then the worst part is it got me interested in other mediums, and so then, a lot of time was spent on those as well.
Right, yeah.
So, which is good. It's it gives you a different perspective on things, and how the industry works, and just all of it.
You learn a lot.
Yeah.
And it's a different way to produce art. Like, it's a different.
You gain an appreciation for the people who make your merch.
There you go. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, what drives you to continue to work on your music and your other forms of art and to perfect those different crafts?
Really just my kids and people.
Yeah. Community.
And what I mean by that is that when I was a kid, my dad pushed me he was a farmer, and when he was younger, he played trumpet, and he was really good, and he went with a group to Europe to play for a little while. Loved Al Hurt and all those great jazz players. And his thing, when I got old enough to go out on my own, was that he told me he wanted me to try, even if I failed. Because if I didn't try, then I would never be able to live with it. That I would always wonder, that I would always, and my kids and other people who have had that inkling of wanting to do something, no matter what that is, you just have to go for it. Even if music doesn't have to be a living, it doesn't have to be a full-time thing. It can just be a hobby that gets you through your life, if that's something that you're passionate about, if art is something that you're passionate about. But too often I see my friends who were, there's kids that I was in bands with, and that we did music, and they were artists, and they just quit because of life and, I'm too busy. And it's like, okay, but there's a part of you missing.
Right.
And so I feel like after everything that I've been through, after everything that I've pushed for, and all of the people who said that, no, you're not ever going to be able to do this, it's going to fail. that if I quit it now, then it's proving their point.
Right.
So I'm kind of bullheaded like that.
That's okay.
You know, and it's always going to be a big part of my life. Like like that period where I didn't play. It was I turned into a different person. And so, you know, hopefully people will be like, well, you know what? He pushed through it. I might as well. So.
Yeah, for sure. Inspiring.
Now, how would you describe indie folk? This is the first time I've ever heard it before, and I like to hear about this genre of music. So how would you describe that? So
it's acoustic Americana. It was something that kind of popped up in the '90s, where it's not your heavily, you know, Celtic or bluegrass driven folk type like Simon and Garfunkel. It's indie folk is a little bit more open ended. It's acoustically driven, but it's the melody lines are a little more sometimes pop, or there's other instruments that are brought into it that normally for a folk Americana band wouldn't be. I guess that's how I would describe it. It's a genre that I found myself in after like not knowing what I was for a long time, and people asking me, well, what's your genre? And then the stuff that I was listening to is indie folk, and it's like that. It can be anything from extremely well produced music where they spend hours in the studio to Iron and Wine was he recorded his first album in his basement, and then they tried to remaster it and just went back to just him and his guitar. So it's pretty broad. It's hard to.
Is it more? It sounds like it's more personal, being that you use it's just you and your guitar, acoustic.
Yeah, it is.
It's a little bit more personal.
Yeah.
And it seems like you would touch the crowd.
The people who listen to indie folk and who go to shows for indie folk, they're not. It's a different crowd. It's a very relaxed, like everybody is intently waiting for each note that's coming out of whoever's playing. Like you can hear a pin drop in a stadium when there's a great performer, an indie folk performer up there, and there's a time and a place for everything, and it's with indie folk it's really reflective.
So it's like melodic.
Yeah, it's very personal, very reflective, very melodic. It's
Deep in that.
Yeah.
Oh, I love the genre. I'm with it so much. It gets me my feels.
How would you describe it? Like that's.
I think you really. It's so hard though to describe genres in general. I feel like, but you did a good job, in my opinion, because especially when you described how people watch these types of musicians, because it really is, because you guys put your heart and soul into it. It's a lot of feeling into it, so we want to feel that too, so we're intently listening to catch everything. So yeah,
that's what I was saying. The acoustic guitar is so beautiful. My mom had me listen to a jazz artist. I cannot remember his name, but I remember the title of the album was called Kiss My Axe. I think you know what I'm talking about. And he goes, it is amazing. It is, man, you have to listen to it. It is beautiful. I mean, the sounds, he goes from acoustic to electric in different songs. But the way my mom would, when you listen to the song being as jazz, but it would tell a story. So mom would be listening to a song and be like, okay, look, you can see them walking on the beach. And one song is actually, you can hear them clapping their hands, and it sounds like they're partying on a beach. Because you can hear the sound, and then they're on a horse galloping, and you can hear, and just the way the rhythm was just going, and it was, oh my gosh. And so I can understand that. So now I'm seeing where you at with that. It's personal. It touches you. It reaches you.
And with independent, it's kind of open-ended. The reason why it's called folk is because it's based in Americana, but you're not confined to those limits. It's more about the emotion, how the songs are structured, than anything. Kind of like what you were talking about with,
It gives you a picture. Is that the picture? Is that sound? Because somebody acoustic guitar I love. It's just the sound. It's just so peaceful, and it's so rhythmic.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Especially when you're good at it, and the speed. Oh my gosh, it brings.
And generally people who listen to indie folk and play indie folk, they're the Seattle, Washington, we like rain and thunderstorms and dreary winter days.
The moody stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're very brooding people.
Yes. Brooding. You got some good wordplay here, man. I like the word choice. 100%. So, like, where can we find this storytelling, broody music that you got? Where can we find this stuff?
So I've got my singles up on Spotify and Apple Music, all of the major platforms. I'm working on getting more up, but I've kind of transitioned. Like, I'm working on a new album right now because I put out the single and then I put out an EP that was just a live EP, and I put that out for free. So if anybody wants that, there's a link on my Facebook. Okay. There should be on my Instagram, but Instagram's weird about links. And then I'm trying to remember where else you can find it. But if anything, you can find me on Facebook, find me on Instagram, and I can send you that link.
It's under Sapphire Son?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay.
Yep. And it's pretty easy to find. You can Google it and find my Twitter and everything else like that.
Right on.
But yeah, nostalgia you can find just about anywhere.
Okay.
So.
Perfect. And so it's a new year. Do you have any big plans for 2020?
Yeah, so I am working on a new album. Nobody knows this yet. But I'm doing everything off of an iPad. So I'm doing everything like at different locations and experimenting with... so I got really big into learning how to do like the massive editing that we can do nowadays with music. Mm-hmm. So it's been taking me more time because I've been experimenting more with organic sounds, so like organic reverbs, and not using plugins as much, because with an iPad I just don't have that capability. It can be done, but it's just you have to be a little bit more creative with how you record it. And so I'm trying to do something. Since Nashville, I've been doing a lot of stuff that I was more towards selling, and this one's just kind of this is my thing. But it's all my thing, it's all like personal to me and to those who I write with. But this is a personal project I've wanted to do for a while, and since I'm doing a lot of kind of the graphic design work and things like that, I'm refocusing my energy back into not being too cliche, but yet not necessarily reinventing myself, but my sound. Which, I mean, that can, a lot of people can say that, but it's just, I dove into the organic acoustic, and now I'm diving further. I'm kind of going off the deep end in a hopefully good way.
In a good way.
But
in a good way.
But doing that diving off into the deep end, as you would say, that actually generates more creativity.
And that's kind of what I'm hoping.
It's taking a chance.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that doing things in this way where, I used to take shortcuts. Now, I'm not going to do this for every album, but maybe this will kind of help me get back to that feeling that I got when I first started playing.
Okay.
Who knows? You may create a whole new sound, and it might pick up, and somebody else might take it on.
Yeah. You never know.
That's the beauty of music. That's what I love about music.
Oh yeah. Endless possibilities with music. I'm looking forward to seeing what you do with this whenever you put it out.
Thank you.
That's exciting. Thank you for giving us some of your time and letting us hang out with you. It's really, really cool chopping it up with you.
I'm really excited about the D&B Circus. It's going to be fun.
Yes, yes it is. It's going to be good times. Am I right, Q?
Yes, it is going to be good times. Like we just, here, Q. Dang it, Krys. But yeah.
But anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Make sure to look up all of our social medias. I think we've got Twitter, Instagram, MHK Music Scene. Same handle for everything.